what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, June 8th. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. Sure, happy it's Thursday. We have lots and lots of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. A couple of program notes here. In our third hour today, Phil Turney and Dave Gahary are going to be joining us to talk about the USS Liberty. And following my show, Phil Turney will continue to guest host the National Intel Report. So you're going to get a lot of information about the USS Liberty, a lot of new books coming on out about it. And I have Phil Turney's book here, right, Erasing the Liberty, which he's trying to get made into a motion picture right now. And after all this time, again, it's another government cover-up that has just absolutely collapsed on that. Now, on Tuesday, June 20th, we're going to have Dr. Renee Default on our show, and we talked about her a little earlier in the week. This is the lady who used to work for the FDA, and she discovered evidence that high fructose corn syrup contained measurable amounts of mercury. And she tried to work through the FDA channels, and they told her, no, stop the investigation. We don't need to investigate that. Everything is just fine. And when she tried to publish, they banned her from using any of the FDA data. And finally, she quit the FDA in disgust, and now she's out on her own. So we're going to be talking to her about that. Now, obviously, today is the 50th anniversary of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, and we are going to talk about that in our third hour, so we don't need to cover any of that here right now. Obviously, the big news today is James Comey's testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee. And if anybody was expecting there to be a smoking gun and an impeachable offense for President Donald Trump, they were sorely disappointed. And again, what he said under oath is one thing. What they put out in that release yesterday was to give the media ammunition that they could keep on going after Trump, because Comey under oath basically didn't have anything. Basically, he confirmed that there was no pressure on him to drop the Russia probe from Trump or anybody else in the Trump administration. They never asked him to do that. He was never asked to stop the investigation into Michael Flynn. And he did confirm that, yes, he had told President Trump that President Trump was not under FBI investigation. So it's all coming on out here. And, of course, Comey is still out there saying that he has no doubt that Russians wanted to interfere in the 2016 election. They were behind the hacking of the DNC emails and the intrusion into the voting systems. And then when he was asked point blank, do you have any evidence Russia altered any vote counts in the last election? And Comey had to say, no, there's no indication whatsoever. So Trumpgate is pretty much over. Russiagate is pretty much over. And Comey even went on out and he called the New York Times on the carpet for their article back in February 14th, where the New York Times was out there saying Trump campaign aides had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence. And Comey came on out and said, no, it was not true. It didn't happen. So good for Comey. When push came to shove, there does seem to be some integrity there, except that one of the bombshells that came on out is that Comey admitted he was one of the leakers inside the White House. And apparently James Comey admitted he gave his memos regarding the conversations with Donald Trump to a friend, Columbia Law School professor Daniel Richman, so that Richman would then pass it on to the corporate media. And Comey admitted the reason he did it was that he hoped it would cause a special investigator to be appointed. So he was the leaker. Now, there's a big debate going on. Was this really classified information that he handed to somebody not entitled? Comey is saying that he deliberately avoided classified information in his memo so that he could share them. And the problem with that, though, is Trump lawyer is saying that these conversations between Comey and the president are considered privileged talks, and they are not supposed to be released. Now, interestingly enough, there's a lot of attention focused on a meeting that Trump had with Comey and Jared Kushner and several other people, and he asked everybody else to clear the room, except for himself and Comey, and everybody said it was highly unusual, something was going on. And Comey is saying that basically Trump repeatedly requested that James Comey pledge his loyalty to Donald Trump. And this supports a theory I've been holding since Trump took office, that he came into the White House dangerously naive about Washington, D.C. politics. He came in presuming that as the president, as the person signing the paychecks for all these people, that they would be automatically loyal to him. And now he's realized Comey was still loyal to Obama. Comey is still loyal to Hillary. And so he had this little private meeting to say, I need you to be loyal to me. And as president, he's entitled to the loyalty of people like the head of the FBI. And apparently Trump came to the conclusion Comey couldn't be trusted, and that's why he was fired. So, and here's where it gets really interesting, okay? Comey came on out and said that he was directed by then Attorney General Loretta Lynch not to call the Hillary Clinton email server issue an investigation, just to call it a matter. That she basically pressured him to downgrade it and say it was not an investigation, it was just a matter. And that's why he publicly announced the end of the investigation in July 2016, and then, of course, Anthony Weiner's laptops with more State Department email surfaced, and he was forced to reopen it. So he was kind of in a corner on that. However, I note that Comey didn't make a memo of that meeting with Loretta Lynch. But at this point, it looks like Comey is throwing Loretta Lynch under the bus, or to be more accurate, under the airplane here. Now, we're going to take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dustin?
Comey anymore, huh?
There you are.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, I guess Comey's not Democrat Tommy anymore, huh?
Well, I guess Comey's heading out to private life now.
What a joke, Mike. What a circle jerk. You know, everybody knows this is BS except for a small percentage of the stupid population, but I want everybody to notice how nothing was done with helping the U.S. people, you know, because of this whole charade, you know. What a joke, Mike. What a joke. It's such a joke. I wonder if the Romans, toward the end, what it was like, you know, because of this whole show, you know, rather than circuses, you know.
The senators all stabbed Julius Caesar to death. You know.
Well, they're trying to do it with Trump, but obviously it's...
Yeah, but these two hearings, yesterday and today, these were supposed to be the death blows, and there's nothing there. Obama did not commit obstruction of justice. Comey has said, no, Obama did not commit obstruction of justice. He didn't ask me to stop any investigations. There's nothing there. And the corporate media is still out there trying to nitpick the words and say, well, you know, Comey was feeling he was pressured. He was feeling he was pressured. And they're just trying to salvage this whole anti-Trump campaign that they've been waging for the last few months because it just fell apart on them.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I know you're going to talk about this later. I wanted to switch gears on the coalition of the losers did it again to the Syrian fighting ISIS. I cannot believe it.
Yeah, it's all falling apart over there. I mean, everybody's switching sides. Everybody's shooting at everybody else. It is descending into complete and utter chaos. They've lost control of it. This is probably one of the worst foreign policy disasters for the United States in a decade.
And how do they know those are Iranians in the pickup, you know? Like, how do they know they're Iranians in the pickup trucks they said they hit? You know, how do they know that?
They don't. They guess. They guess. They profile. They just say, we were right to hit the mosque because we know it was full of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and you're just supposed to believe it. But nobody buys it anymore.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot.
Have a great show.
Thank you. We're going to let you go here. And obviously, Trump is feeling very vindicated. James Comey's testimony was much ado about nothing as far as the public is concerned. Certainly the corporate media is trying to find something that's in there. Now, there is a classified briefing later in the day that we don't know what's going to come on out of that. But at this point, this dump Trump campaign has fallen apart. And Trump, again, I don't agree with everything that you're doing. But you are the president. You won the election. You played by the rules. Everybody agreed to play by. You are the president. And I'm glad you're wising up to the reality that not everybody in that White House is automatically on your side. And it may be time for some more staff changes here. Get out that "you're fired" button from your TV show here. Roger Stone is out there saying, everybody understands James Comey is a shill for the Clintons. He was protecting Hillary from the email scandal. He was trying to protect her on the Clinton Foundation. And he's dirty. He was on the board at HSBC when they were caught laundering drug money. So it's all dirty. We're going to take another phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, just the common language of all lying politicians. Expect to hear the phrase, you'll hear it over and over again, and we saw Hillary Clinton do this under deposition every time. She'll be using the words, and he'll be using the phrase, "I have no recollection." Expect to hear that over and over again when they don't want to tell the truth.
He didn't use that.
Expect to hear that.
He didn't use that. I mean, I'm very pleasantly surprised. Comey came on out, and he basically said, the New York Times was lying in their story about Trump's people having contacts with Russian intelligence. He stood his ground. My respect for the man has gone up tremendously because everyone was expecting him to go on in there and grind his axe for being fired, and instead he went on in there under oath. I guess he took it very seriously being under oath, and he manned up. And the important points to come on down is he was never asked to stop the investigation into Russia. He was never asked to stop the investigation into Michael Flynn. All Trump asked him for was his loyalty, which is a very reasonable thing to do when you're dealing with a subordinate who may not be entirely loyal. And that was it. There was nothing there. And the corporate media has got egg on their face, and they're desperately trying to find out how they can recover from this over at MSNBC. Even Chris Matthews was saying, there's nothing there. There's no there. This whole collusion theory has just fallen apart.
Was there any discussion, Michael, of why the FBI was to make the decision, the role reversal between the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and James Comey? Was there a discussion of why there was a role reversal on the power of who makes the decision?
No, they didn't get into that that I heard. I listened to as much of the hearings as I could. I had to step away for a couple of things for some other issues. But in any event, that's pretty much a settled matter. It is not the FBI's job to make recommendations whether or not to prosecute. Comey exceeded his authority during that press conference when he said, we're recommending no charges. But it was a set piece. Loretta Lynch had already said there are not going to be any investigations or any charges. There's that memo that surfaced that said Loretta Lynch was going to make sure that it never happened. Now we're finding out from Comey himself that Loretta Lynch said, don't call it an investigation. It's not an investigation. It's just a matter. It's only a matter. It's not all that important. And Comey is saying that's why he said the investigation has now been closed back in July, only to be forced to reopen it again when Anthony Weiner's laptop surfaced.
Yeah. Well, I hope they actually go into that area there because the hierarchy, the power decision-making should have gone with her, not him. And I would like somebody to address that. I hope they address that because that's out of sequence of how it's supposed to be done. And she didn't do her job, and they reversed roles. It was quite obvious they reversed roles.
Yeah, but you need to understand when you have a congressional hearing, it usually has a very specific issue, and it's not broad range. They can't just wander off where the evidence leads. Yesterday's was about the Russian collusion. Today was about a possible obstruction of justice by Donald Trump, and both of them fell apart, even though Comey got his digs in saying he still believes Russia was trying to interfere with the election. But we already know the Russians did not hack the DNC emails. It was an internal leak. There is zero evidence that Russia got in there, and a lot of circumstantial evidence that Seth Rich was the leak. Okay?
Well, I agree. That kind of has died out, the story now, the Seth Rich. Nobody's even talking about it anymore. And
we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about it a lot.
I hope you continue to do so.
Corporate media wants it to go away because, again, it's another huge embarrassment. If it comes out Seth Rich was the leak, then the corporate media, more egg on their face for screaming, Russia hacking, Russia hacking, Russia hacking. They're in panic mode over there right now. They're in absolute panic mode over there. Steve, we're going to let you go here. Going to do another story, then we're going to do more phone calls here. We did a flashback story to an article that appeared in Breitbart, and basically it's talking about how James Comey's had this professional history in relationships where he was involved with the Clinton Foundation through this law firm. His brother Peter Comey works at the law firm that does the Clinton Foundation taxes. He had conflicts of interest all over the place. He never should have been put in charge of any investigations involving the Clintons. Now, behind all of this noise and ruckus, where the corporate media is trying to salvage something that they can use against President Trump from these two hearings, there was another report released where the House Oversight Committee came on out and said former Attorney General Eric Holder and the Department of Justice were covering up Operation Fast and Furious. They were deliberately misleading Congress into this botched gun-running operation. It's a 300-page report, and the corporate media so far is ignoring it. They're ignoring it. Reminds me of this cartoon that I saw. I think it was on one of the aggregates just the other day, where there's all these boxes and piles of evidence against Hillary Clinton in collusion with Russia, and the guy behind the desk is holding up an empty box that says evidence of Trump collusion. And there's a donkey there saying, well, that only proves we have to search harder. You know, if there's no evidence Trump did anything wrong, that just means we've got to investigate more until we can find or make something. And it is rather amazing to see the entire corporate media so firmly in the liberal camp here that they are oblivious to all the things that the Clintons were doing, the Bushes were doing, all of the oddities about Seth Rich and the other 4 or 5 people who died about the same time that were threats to the Clintons. But it's always going to be, we got to do about Trump, we got to do about Trump. And the corporate media is still out there. They're trying to find anything that was said yesterday and today that they can spin to say, well, Trump may have gotten off, but there's something definitely bad there. There's something definitely bad. All right, let's take some phone calls here. Nico in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, nui nui.
Aloha, nui nui. Oh, what we need to do is shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Please continue.
Well, 2 things. Number one, I just got so sick watching this because you got, Senator Warner, was it? And it was like this continuous derriere kissing of, oh, well, we appreciate your service and you're such a patriot and you're
that's just part of the ritual here. Personally, I find Britain's Parliament much more entertaining to watch, where they yell at each other and hurl insults and they bang and make noise. That's a lot more fun to watch than the U.S. Congress.
It's so funny you say that. I feel the same way, and I actually watch it for the same reason. But I'm seeing this, and they kind of started to try to pound home this Russian collusion thing, and it was lie after lie, and were any of the votes changed? None of the votes were changed, and we know so many of the votes were changed. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, they weren't changed by Russia, though. Again, all of the documented election fraud from last year favored Hillary Clinton. So obviously this story that Russia was interfering with the election to benefit Trump is just bogus right from its conception, like the claim that Assad was gassing his own people. Just doesn't make any sense.
See, and that's the thing that, the truth is some of the votes were changed. They could have said, actually votes did change. And they didn't even use that to their advantage. These people are so backwards. But the main thing
what's going on here is they understand the American people are not sure they can trust our election system. So they're trying to come on back and say, it can't be rigged, it can't be rigged, it's impossible to rig it, and we found no evidence that Russia altered the votes here. They don't want to acknowledge the election fraud that was uncovered because they don't want to fix the system. They like it exactly the way it is, and they want the American people to go back to believing that when they walk into that little booth and they push that button on the computer, that the vote is being counted accurately. And so they're not going to acknowledge any election fraud anywhere, out of concern that the American people demand a complete overhaul of
the tube. I mean, too many people know. I think the other thing
we got to let you go. We got to let you go. We got to let you go. I'm sorry. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a couple more phone calls. Pardon me. Then we're going to get back to the news here. Tom in Indiana. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Aloha. Aloha. I'm glad you survived the earthquake.
Which earthquake?
Well, you had one in Hawaii today. It was on Drudge.
Oh, really? I must have missed that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I was so proud of John McCain today, even though he called President. He was talking about Trump, and he was talking about Kumi and asking Kumi if Kumi did this. What he did was he reminded Kumi and the other people that the Clintons took a lot of money from Russia during the election, and yet that part of it they completely forgot about, and they were only going against Trump. So even though he couldn't get his president straight, I was very proud of the old man for at least bringing up the premise that the Russians were in the Clinton as far as the election was concerned.
Okay. All right.
And enjoy your mouse pad.
Oh, yeah. I actually needed those. The Formic is coming off the table here. All right, Tom, thank you very much for the update. We're going to switch over to Mike in Alaska. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Do you listen to Stefan Molyneux?
No, not really. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I like Stefan and your show, and you're both atheists, and I think that one reason I like both of your shows is you put together a really good explanation as to why it's not militant or hostile. It's just if you go to your website or listen to his podcast, it's pretty straightforward. So, you know, even someone who isn't can read it and understand the conclusion you've come to. And I've been listening to him recently, and he had Dennis Prager on his show talking about the correlation between secularism or atheism and totalitarianism. And I kind of wanted to get your comment because,
well,
not an argument to
Okay, first of all, I want to make something very clear. I don't care if other people have religion, as long as they don't use it to do bad things. I think the atheists who are out there who are militant about it are actually insecure in their non-belief. They're still not really sure, and that's why they have to reassure themselves by convincing other people. I really want to keep the show today focused on what's going on right in the here and now with Comey's testimony, the wars that are coming on up, and so I'd like to possibly table this discussion to a later time, okay?
Oh, okay, sure.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch to Paul in Canada. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mikey. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Good. Well, I looked at that testimony, and all I saw was a bunch of incoherent testimony coming out of Comey's mouth. He looks confused to me.
Well, I think he's trying to sort of chart his way through where he doesn't want to commit perjury. He's trying to keep in mind what evidence is out there that could say, okay, this was a lie and this was a lie, which would open him up to legal consequences for lying before Congress.
Yeah, I think he did that already. He leaked.
Well, you know, he's having to deal with the backlash on that one because the White House position is private conversations with the president are privileged. And
absolutely.
Comey is out there saying, no, this wasn't classified, therefore I was free to leak it to whatever. They're going to natter and gromish about that a little bit. But in the end, the net result is that yesterday's and today's hearings did not provide the body check to Donald Trump that his detractors wanted. It's a big, epic fail, and it is almost enjoyable watching the corporate media try and salvage something out of this that they can wipe the egg off their faces. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But one more thing, Mike.
Yes.
Russian collusion thing. It's you touched on it already, but it's really important for us to remember that, these foreign governments, a lot of them, they play both sides, just like the bankers.
So does the U.S. The U.S. is always interfering in other nations. Israel interferes in our politics all the time. It's only evil when Russia does it. Okay, got to let you go. Got to take a commercial break. We're going to close the phone lines because I got a bunch of news to get through. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we get back to the major news, I was looking into it. And yes, we did have a 5.3 earthquake down on the Big Island on the south flank of the Kilauea volcano. No immediate reports of damage or injuries, and no threat of a tsunami. I'm up on the island of Oahu, of course, and if I'd been sitting still, I might have felt it. But if I'm walking around, I probably didn't notice it, and I didn't. I had no idea that we had an earthquake. My little automated monitoring system, the threshold is set at 6.0 before I get notifications about these things. But yes, it's an active volcano down there. There is a concern that there is a portion of that south flank of Kilauea volcano that's actually cracked and slid down just a little bit. So sort of a smaller version of what they have over at Cumbre Viejo. And that at some point in the far distant future, that could plop off into the ocean, and that would inconvenience a lot of people living along the shoreline. But Claire and I are high up on a hill, so we're not concerned about that. Now then, getting on back to the real serious news here, and we are going to talk about Seth Rich. Because the corporate media obviously wants this to go away. The corporate media is literally attacking anybody talking about Seth Rich, the usual tinfoil hat, kook, conspiracy, wacko things. I mean, how could you even think that this was anything other than a robbery? Well, because they didn't take anything. He was beat up, and then he was shot in the back twice. That's not what happens in a robbery. So, yeah, we're going to keep that alive. We're going to keep it going. By the way, there is a petition over at the White House petition website demanding a full investigation into the assassination of Seth Rich, and it's about halfway to the goal of 100,000 signatures with about 10 more days to go. So there is a link to that at whatreallyhappened.com. You might want to grab that and send it out to your social media and see if we can put the number of signatures over the top. Unfortunately, we've seen in the past the official response from the White House will be, we understand you made the threshold, we're not going to do anything. Because again, all of this undermines the official story we've been getting from the Democrats, from Hillary, from the corporate media about Russia hacked the DNC servers, even though the sole claimed evidence of Russian hacking came from that CrowdStrike company, and they've now pulled back and said no. And the Democrats refuse to allow any U.S. government agency to run a forensic analysis on their computers. There is zero evidence, and still they're out there. Oh, yes, it was Russia. Wasn't Seth Rich. Couldn't possibly be Seth Rich. Still getting a lot of backlash out of the London terror attacks. By the way, the latest count on the British elections is the Conservatives and Theresa May are ahead, and we'll get a final vote tally here a little bit later in the show here. But more and more attention is starting to focus on the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who is out there again attacking Donald Trump over the travel bans. At the same time, Sadiq Khan is saying that Donald Trump should be forbidden from coming to London until he goes back to the open border policy. And a lot of people are scratching their head because apparently Sadiq Khan was a defender of one of the 9/11 terrorists, Zacarias Moussaoui. And a lot of people are saying, how does somebody who defends a 9/11 terrorist become the mayor of London? And apparently, even the Queen is a little upset with him now. And I don't know what she can do about it. I think right now, in the current state of British law, her sole authority is to grant the Prime Minister permission to form a government, and that's basically the end of it. They go this little ritual where whoever wins the election kneels before the Queen, requests permission to form a government, and the Queen says, yeah, go ahead, and that's it. Meanwhile, the mother of one of the three men at the London Bridge terror attack believed he was under police control and not dangerous. And something else has come on out. Remember the other day it was revealed that the suicide vests, the supposed explosive vests worn by these attackers, turned out to be fake. And a very alert reader pointed out that when the police opened fire on these terrorists, had those vests been real, there was a real risk of a detonation. And yet the police seemed to understand that they could shoot these guys without fear of an explosion. There's another indication that this was just another staged false flag. These three guys were set up to be patsies here. All right, let's talk about what's going on over in Qatar, because that is just spinning into total chaos here. Qatar, understandably, has put their military on the highest state of alert over fears of an imminent incursion from Saudi Arabia. Qatar has basically turned down Saudi Arabia's list of 10 demands and said, we will never surrender. And all of a sudden, we're starting to see alliances in the Middle East start to shift. Turkey is sending troops and equipment down to Qatar on the side of Qatar. Iran is sending food and other supplies across. And more interestingly, apparently the government of Qatar is talking with the government of Iran. Apparently Iran has taken the position of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Plus, Iran is heavily invested in the Iranian-Qatari cooperation over the liquefied natural gas, which is Qatar's primary export. So it is really shaping up, and new battle lines are being drawn. And the wild card is Turkey. This is blowback for that failed U.S. coup d'etat. So, over in Turkey, they're fast-tracking bills to deploy Turkish forces in Qatar and train Qatari troops. Turkey is building a new base in Qatar that will eventually host up to 10,000 troops. If they kick out those 11,000 Americans that are in there, that's more room. And that's a wild card in there. Did Donald Trump not understand that when he kicked up this fuss over Qatar that there are 11,000 U.S. forces on the ground there? And what is going to happen to them? Are they going to be ordered to march on the capital from where they're currently stationed? Is Qatar going to round them up, put them in a concentration camp? Are they going to take them to the border and say, you're Saudi Arabia's problem now? And apparently this Saudi-Qatar spat is spilling over into parts of northwestern Syria as these U.S.-backed rebels/terrorists are now turning on each other because some are pro-Saudi and some are pro-Qatar, and they're actually starting to fight amongst each other. Meanwhile, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates have passed laws saying that anybody expressing sympathy for Qatar can go to jail. And if you will remember, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates are listed as the good guys by the U.S. government because we have got bases there and they're our friends and they may be dictators and horribly abusing their people, but as long as they're working with our corporations, that'll be fine. Meanwhile, Jordan attempted to send 33 refrigerated trucks of food for Qatar. Unfortunately, Saudi Arabia turned them back, wouldn't let them through. And that is not going to look very good in the eyes of the world. We understand Saudi Arabia blockading weapons, but we've been seeing Saudi Arabia blockading food to Yemen, and what a terrible humanitarian crisis it's caused there. And Saudi Arabia is doing it again. Now, obviously, Jordan and Iran can consider sending in humanitarian supplies with an airlift. For Saudi Arabia to actually shoot down a humanitarian flight, that is not going to look good at all. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Apparently, this coming Saturday, Qatar's foreign minister is visiting Moscow for negotiations. So it looks like the first battlefront of World War III for real is shaping up with Russia, Iran, Qatar, Turkey on one side, Syria, Saudi Arabia, the United States on the other. And the rest of the world is wondering just what the heck happened. Apparently up in Germany, they're branding all of this nonsense the Trumpification of the Middle East. And it does seem like it all started with that one reckless comment from Donald Trump. Now, getting on over to Iran, Iran's Revolutionary Guards are blaming the United States and Saudi Arabia for those attacks in Tehran. And they're pointing out that the choice of targets shows whose agenda was at work, because they targeted the parliament and the mausoleum of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who led the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Somebody was making a statement with that. And that's why they think ultimately that the United States and Saudi Arabia are behind this, regardless of what somebody says on the phone when they call up and say, I'm ISIS, we did it, come and get us. Story out of The Guardian is saying, and this is true, the consequences of the attacks in Tehran will be felt around the world. And they too are saying that what was attacked were the two most potent symbols of Iran's 1979 revolution that kicked out their U.S. puppet ruler, the Shah, and brought democracy to Iran. And Donald Trump, again, I think he needs to pull back from saying, I'm the president and I can say and do whatever I want. He needs to think about what he's going to say before he opens his mouth. Because he came on out saying that the terror attacks in Tehran were the result of Tehran funding international terror. In other words, you reap what you sow. But of course, 9/11 happened because they hate our freedoms. And Iran is very upset. They consider his statement repugnant, and for that matter, so do I. Now, getting on over to Syria, one of our callers mentioned this before. The U.S. has attacked the Syrian army for the second time this week, and the third such attack in less than a month. And the justification is they came close to an illegal U.S. garrison. They crossed our red line. And again, the United Nations Security Council has not confirmed or legitimized or authorized a deconfliction zone. Damascus has not agreed to it. It's just the U.S. going on in, plunking itself down, drawing a line and say, we will attack anybody who comes on in here. And upping the ante, apparently Syria sent a drone against the U.S. coalition forces. Now, the drone hit the dirt, and Syria is saying it's a warning shot. But the U.S. is saying, oh no, they intended to hit us. U.S. Army Colonel Ryan Dillon said, oh, they were aiming for us. It wasn't a warning shot, but thankfully they missed. So it does feel like it's on. It does feel like it's on. The United States is now basically in an illegal, undeclared war with Syria, and it's time to start talking about it. Because pretty much all of these wars are illegal under international law. The use of torture is illegal under international law. And it's rapidly building up. And we are headed to a real, full-on global war, which I don't think this country can win. Especially if it goes nuclear. Nobody's going to win in a nuclear war. Vladimir Putin was absolutely right on that. If the United States and Russia and China go to a hot war, the use of nuclear weapons is inevitable. Another article over in Zero Hedge, Syria's cauldron one step away from a major showdown. Actually, with the use of that drone, I think it's a half step. Just insane. It was only a couple of months ago. Everybody said, all right, Assad can say this. We're going to wind this thing down. Then they had that false flag attack. Oh, Assad is gassing his people. Trump sends in the cruise missiles, most of which missed their target. And all of a sudden, we're right back up to where Syria could be the flashpoint for a global war. Now, speaking of Idlib, article out of RIMF.com, more and more people are starting to stand up and point out how that original New York Times story that Assad was gassing his own people in Idlib just never really made any sense at all. Remember, Assad surrendered all of his chemical weapons. It was internationally monitored. Russia brokered the deal to try and calm things down, to try and keep a war from growing in there. And the claim that Assad was gassing his own people didn't even make any sense. He's winning the war inside his own country. The international community was coming to accept Assad was going to stay on there. Why would he gas his own people, civilians? The one thing that would guarantee the United States would come back in. Cui bono? Certainly wasn't Assad here. And more people are going on back and saying the New York Times story was absolute junk. And now we have, of course, James Comey, calling out the New York Times for their story that members of the Trump administration had repeated contact with Russian intelligence. And he said in the hearing today, it never happened. It didn't happen. The New York Slimes was just making this stuff up, because that's their job, to lie you into support of the war agenda, to lie you into the next tax, to lie you into the next policy change, to lie you into the next surrender of your basic civil liberties, freedoms, and rights. Now, over in Iraq, the Kurds are planning an independence referendum on September 25th. And this is going to be rather fun to watch, because if the referendum passes, and it probably will, you're going to have the United States government saying, well, see, they voted for independence. Now we have to break them off from Iraq and let them form their own country. Standing in stark contrast to the U.S. government's reaction when Crimea held an independence referendum that won in a landslide, and they broke off Ukraine. And the U.S. was out there saying, no, Russia stole Crimea. We don't recognize the independence referendum. We have to respect the traditional boundaries of nations. We can't. And once again, the U.S. government will be shown to be absolute, total, complete hypocrites. Now then, back in 2015, there was a guy named Scott Darden. He was a U.S. logistics coordinator, and he was captured by Houthi forces in the Yemen capital city of Sana'a and held for 6 months before his release. Now, during that whole time, he was being presented as participating in the delivery of humanitarian aid into the country. And that was it. Oh, he was there doing humanitarian. How could they do this? Well, apparently, it's now come on out that under the cover of the humanitarian aid, he was delivering war material to U.S. Special Forces who were operating in Yemen back in 2015. Lie upon lie upon lie. The first casualty of war is the truth. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines again if you want to call on in. Meanwhile, like I said earlier, it is amazing to see the corporate media try and salvage something out of these two train wrecks of hearings. And over at Reason.com is a perfect example. Their headline story is Comey tells Senate he believes Trump wanted the Flynn Russia investigation stopped. So that's it. They're trying to make a story out of Comey thinks Trump wanted the investigation stopped. Oh, that's obstruction of justice. No, it isn't, because Comey stated under oath nobody ordered him to stop either the Flynn or the Russia investigations. What Comey is imagining is inside Trump's head is irrelevant, and the corporate media is trying to make that the story. Now then, catching back up on Great Britain, we're going to be getting the first official results from the election in a little over an hour. We're probably going to have to be cutting in on the Phil Turney, Dave Gahary USS Liberty segment to get those numbers to you, but we're getting down to the wire. And apparently the surveys are all over the place. Everybody's claiming imminent victory. And I'm sure there's a huge amount of election fraud going on, because that's, by golly, how these things get done over there. All righty. Now then, Amnesty International has finally stepped in to this issue over the illegal settlements in Israel and Palestine. And they have come on in and said it is time to stop buying any Israeli goods made in the illegal settlements, because that is what's funding these illegal settlements. So they're basically signing on with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And, of course, Israel's already out there screaming, Amnesty International, they're anti-Semites. They're biased against Israel, just like the United Nations and everybody else. And everybody just sort of ignores Israel because they keep saying the same thing over and over again. That's like trying to defend the actions of the Nazis by saying, oh, you just hate the German people. We're not doing anything wrong. You just hate Germans. That's your problem. Defense Minister General of the Russian Army, Sergei Shoigu, is out there saying Russia is going to start strengthening its military bases in Central Asia. And they are doing it purportedly because of the concern of the spread of ISIS. And the concern that the United States is not able to get Afghanistan under control. I think, in actuality, Russia understands that the U.S. actually does want a hot war with Russia, and they're going to get ready. I mean, it's coming. There's nobody out there who's paying attention to world events who's going to say, well, maybe we can still head this up. I wanted to. I really did. But I admit defeat. The war is coming. You can feel it in the air. I mean, there's training flights all over the skies overhead, rattling the windows and everything. Maybe that's why I missed the earthquake. The whole place was shaking from all the jets overhead. There's been a bomb attack on the U.S. Embassy in Kiev. Apparently somebody threw a bomb of some kind over the fence onto the grounds. And apparently nobody was injured. But it does seem to indicate the feeling of people in Ukraine towards the United States. We're going to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. We've already got a caller waiting on the line. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a phone call from Gil in Arizona. Aloha, Gil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. A while back, Russia had announced that they reduced their military capability by about 25%. And there was an interesting article in SputnikNews.com this morning that they really feel confident that they don't need to spend a whole lot of money on expensive weapons system because they feel that their electronic warfare systems can really play helter-skelter with our stuff. And so it was kind of interesting. I was wondering what you thought about it.
Well, when it comes to weapons, everybody's going to be lying back and forth, but we know that the U.S. military-industrial complex is all about building very expensive weapons that are just full of features and bloated, and they don't really function all that well, whereas Russia and China focus on building very reliable, rugged, low-cost weapons that just go on out and do a single task. One of the biggest mistakes I think the U.S. went into was this idea that all aircraft be multi-role, and trying to be all things to all people turns out to be not very good at any of them, and I think the F-35 is a good example of that. But there is no question Russia's electronic warfare is formidable. There was the Donald Cook incident in the Black Sea. It may be that Russian electronic warfare equipment is why most of the cruise missiles fired at the Syrian airfield missed, and even the ones that hit the airfield didn't hit really significant targets. So it could definitely be there. But we do know that both Russia and China, instead of just building up more of the weapons that won the last war, which is more or less what the U.S. has been doing, they're thinking outside the box. They're able to get around the ballistic missile defense system by simply having maneuverable warheads. They've come out with some amazing weapons that are specifically designed to evade the current U.S. defenses. The Zircon anti-ship missile is a good example of that. And apparently Russia's already fielded what are called cavitating torpedoes. These are torpedoes that actually bleed a stream of bubbles along its hull, and these things can hit something like 75 miles an hour. So, yeah, going to be very, very tough to stop.
There was another thing that's been going around, and I don't know whether this is fake news or what. There's been, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer on the second question. What's with this Cumbre Vieja volcano, where it could devastate the entire East Coast if somebody put a small nuke on this volcano out in some islands out there off of the African coast?
Yeah, it's in the Canary Islands. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concern. The whole western-facing flank of that volcano has slipped down quite a bit more than our little displacement zone on Kilauea. But yeah, if somebody could trigger that off, it would create a monster tsunami that would hit the entire east coast of the United States.
Right. Okay, so that's not fake news then.
Well, it's not fake news. It's just a theory. Nobody obviously has tried to put it into fact, but yeah, it could be done.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate your program.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Now then, North Korea has launched another batch of missiles defying international condemnation, and they were out there. The first reports actually said they were ballistic missiles, trying to hammer home the point, oh, see, North Korea is being defiant. And as it turns out, the missiles were anti-ship missiles, surface to ship. They weren't ballistic. They were guided. And that particular kind of missile is not subject to any resolution by the United Nations, because such missiles are clearly defensive in nature. But they're trying to make a big deal about that. Meanwhile, down in the Philippines, they tried to get a ceasefire going between the government of the Philippines and this ISIS group that all of a sudden magically appeared to try and take over the country because the country is being rough on drug dealers. But apparently the ceasefire has failed, and the Philippine Army has launched airstrikes against these ISIS-aligned Maut groups in Marawi's Barangay Mapandi area. So there's fighting there. Is there any place on this planet where they're not killing each other? Might be just easier to keep track of those. Meanwhile, the United States Army is dealing with the fact that people who are at the end of their enlistment are deciding not to re-enlist. They've had it. They've seen what the wars are really like. They understand that these are not moral, necessary, or even legal wars. They want to get on out. The U.S. Army is now offering bonuses up to $90,000 to get their experienced soldiers to re-enlist, trying reversing the military downsizing that started under Barack Obama's presidency. If that doesn't work, you know what's next. They're going to bring back the draft. And I think it would actually be a good thing if they did, because that will wake up the American people. It's when they reinstituted the draft for Vietnam, that's when everybody stood up and said, okay, we got to take a really good look at why we're in this swamp on the other side of the planet before I let my kid go over there and get killed and crippled. I think that's the only reason they haven't started the draft yet, is they know it will provoke a serious backlash in the American people. Maybe they're waiting for a really big bang so that we'll all say, oh yes, take my child, save me from the evil terrorists, or whatever. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, there's been a lot of talk going back and forth over at the European Union about having a grand army of the European Union. And the member states of the European Union are not very on board with that idea. First of all, because it gives Brussels a military force with which to slap down member states that are not doing as they're told, like letting in refugees, or even daring to say we want out. And as it turns out, the United States is not totally on board with this either, because a Grand Army of the European Union would draw resources away from the member states of the European Union that are currently going to NATO. And of course, the United States does not want another major significant military force running around that part of the world that is not under U.S. control, as NATO pretty much is. So they're fighting back against that one. Meanwhile, the U.S. is actually expressing concern that Germany is acting more and more like they are in control of the European Union. And that's an area of serious concern, because in a lot of ways, looking at the map, it's not unlike the rise of the Third Reich. Now, as you know, there's been a huge propaganda embarrassment over this Aleppo boy image, where he was photographed, he was in bandages. Oh, Syria's forces had bombed this innocent civilian village. He was injured, people were killed. And as it turned out, it was a hoax. First of all, the boy's family are pro-Assad, so Assad didn't have a reason to be bombing that village. And the father of the child has now gone public on several interviews in Europe and Asia, saying that basically they used his son without his permission and basically applied coercive means to get him to stay silent. But now he's come on out and said, no, this was all a hoax. It was absolutely a hoax. And now Russia Today is broadcasting this interview of Omran Dagnish's father, Mohammed Kir Dagnish, and it concludes with a call on Christine Amanpour to come on back and have an honest interview with the Aleppo boy and his family. And my response to that is, an honest interview? CNN? Are you on drugs? We're going to take a phone call. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. I just want to make a comment about the draft. They don't even need anybody in the military. All they've done over the last 20 years is bomb people from 30,000 feet and use drones. this country the military and the government cannot take casualties. Everybody knows that nobody's happy with these wars. You start sending caskets back in any kind of numbers, you're going to have a hell of a backlash. Now, I think they like privatizing things, this administration. I think they should privatize the military and make ExxonMobil and big business pay for it, because that's what's going on over there. This is a big business.
No. You don't understand at all. We, the ordinary American people, we are going to pay and bleed for the wars so that the profits by ExxonMobil and all these other companies can be that much higher. That's the way it works. Now, in terms of a war, one of the lessons that they should have taken out of Vietnam is you cannot win a war from the air. You have to take control of the ground. You have to take control of the railheads. You have to take control of where the transportation hubs, and that has to be done on the ground. And you're right. When a lot of bodies start coming on back, there will be a backlash from the American people. The U.S. can bomb all these countries all they want, but look at what's happened so far. They can't totally control Afghanistan despite all the airstrikes. They're still stuck in Iraq. They're still stuck in Libya. They're still stuck in Yemen. They've been in Syria for 5 years. You can't win a war from the air, and you know that's just the reality of it. Well,
maybe they don't want to win these wars. They didn't. They could have easily won Vietnam, but they did all sorts of stuff that made it very suspicious that they didn't even want to win the war. They just want to keep pounding out the munitions and just keep going on and on.
Yeah,
they don't want to win.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem with that, okay? Right now, the United States is broke. The American people are broke. We can't pay any more taxes to buy bombs, bullets, and the rest of it. And so where the military... Yeah, the government can just borrow more money from the private central bank to give to the military contractors. But that's only hastening the eventual collapse of the United States. If we can't actually pay back those war debts, especially if we lose, and I think we will, then we're in serious, serious trouble.
Okay, Mike. That's all I got.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Understandably, out here in Hawaii, people are very, very nervous. They're starting to talk about it a little bit more because North Korea, nobody was really worried about North Korea. Even if they managed to get a nuclear bomb onto Pearl Harbor, most of us, there wouldn't be anything. The nuclear weapons currently used by Russia and especially China, they will get everybody. So we're very, very nervous about this idea of a hot war. We're very nervous about the fact that both our government and Russia's government are openly talking about, the possibility of nuclear exchanges. And this island will get hit because even though most of the actual assets like ships are forward-based in Guam and Diego Garcia and the Sea of Japan, all of the communications for the Pacific Fleet go through Pearl Harbor. Whole bunch of antennas all over this island. This is a major communication nexus, and it will get hit. All right, moving on to the corporate media here, and I was debating whether I wanted to even mention this because I think Kathy Griffin has had her 15 minutes of fame, but it does seem like a worthy postscript. Apparently, at this point, Kathy Griffin has lost all of her shows, sponsors, and the CNN job following that horrible Trump beheading stunt. And it was tasteless, and it was inappropriate, and she's still out there saying, Trump's trying to destroy me, I'm the victim, feel sorry for me. No, we don't feel sorry for you at all. And the public is effectively shunning her for doing what she did. All right, let's talk about the economic news. That is also not looking all that well. Article coming out of Blacklisted News, the bail-in era for Europe's banking crisis begins. Now, fortunately, over in Spain, Banco Popular was acquired by Santander, and they avoided having to invoke the European Union's bail-in law. But that's just a temporary stopgap, because all of these banks are in trouble for the same reason the United States is in trouble. All the wealth is concentrated at the top, and the debt created by the private central banks grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And apparently a lot of Banco Popular shareholders, despite the acquisition by Santander, because the price was just €1, they've been wiped out. They have been wiped out. Now, here in the United States, a lot of people have been wondering, how is it that the stock market continues to stay up when the earnings reports are just dismal? Reporting season after reporting season after reporting season. Well, what's been going on is really very simple. The Federal Reserve will just print up some more money, and we still have no idea how much they've done, and they buy the stocks, and they buy bonds to try and keep their value up. And now they're in a little bit of a problem. And it's not just the Federal Reserve. Other central banks have been playing the same game to try and keep their stock markets up. And now they're just loaded with all of this overpriced stock. And if there's a major correction, they will be wiped out. And they can't sell. If they start selling in any amount, they're going to knock the market down. And what they've got left will then be worthless. They're in a real corner on this. They are in a real corner. Needless to say, Qatar's credit rating has been cut over the Gulf blockade crisis. We're going to go back to the phones here. Brendan in San Francisco, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just wanted to piggyback on the last call. And I don't know if it's Orwell. They say the goal is not to win the war, but to continue the war. And if you're going to destroy the United States, what better way to do it than to, drag us through these wars and break us financially, spiritually? This is the plan, right? I don't see where the disconnect is.
I'm not sure that there really is that much of a plan. I know the Bilderbergers are trying to come up with some kind of a way to move forward toward the global government. But at this point, it feels like it's gone out of control. I know there's a lot of people who like to dream that they're in control of what's going on the earth, like Bill Gates and George Soros. But at this point, I think reality is starting to set in, that the reins have slipped. They've lost control of this.
Vietnam, I understand they set up all these rules of engagement that made it impossible for U.S. troops to effectively fight and win. And once again, the goal is not to win, but to continue these wars. You know that, right?
Yeah,
I think
do
you
know
even
that.
said that.
I do know that. And Vietnam was all about enriching the military-industrial complex. And certainly that factor is definitely at work today. Eisenhower did warn us about that. The problem is, it's one thing to enrich the military-industrial complex by raising taxes on the American people, and quite another for the central government itself to go deeper and deeper into debt to enrich the military-industrial complex without a resolution somewhere down the road that will allow those debts to be settled, and that's the component that's missing.
Resolution, though, is to destroy the country and carve it up, to take all our beautiful...
No, you misunderstood me. You misunderstood me.
Like the Uranium One deal, where they...
Hey! Okay, Brandon, you got to learn to let me talk. This is my radio show. You misunderstood what I meant by a resolution. In the economic sense, the resolution is the acquisition of enough wealth to balance out the books for the cost of the war. That's the resolution. Now, I know that the corporate...
Yeah, but like Greece, they just carved up all the islands.
Yeah,
right?
I know, and they're privatizing the water supplies, and that's the corporate agenda, that everything be privatized, and that the people... It's a return to feudalism. The people own nothing, the corporations own everything, and that is definitely part of the bedrock of the globalist New World Order. But again, getting on back to this idea of running the wars just to grind up munitions, we're already starting to run out. And we don't have the resources to replace the munitions that have already been expended rapidly enough to be thinking about going up against a military peer. Anyway, Brandon, we're coming up on a commercial break. I'm going to let you go here. And finally, another interesting little story. This came out of oilprice.com. Is Russia running out of patience with OPEC? And basically, Russia is getting very tired of the fact that they are keeping their agreements of the Vienna deal, but they're starting to see other OPEC members are sort of fudging the numbers and trying to make more money, and Russia may just say they're going to pull out of OPEC. And certainly this conflict in the Middle East with Saudi Arabia on one side and Iran on the other, that could be the end of OPEC. And that is going to cause all kinds of economic chaos. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm looking at the corporate media where they're out there saying, oh, we were stunned, we were shocked, we were confused. Again, not a mention of the fact that Comey stated under oath, nobody asked him to stop the Flynn investigation, nobody asked him to stop the Russia investigation. It's all about, oh, Comey felt pressure. He felt Trump was pressuring him. It's all very subjective. All right, back to the phones. Jim in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, like I just had a comment that Trump wants to ban travel. He should ban the travel of the armed forces of the United States.
Okay, under what rationale?
Well, it just seems to me that that would solve a lot of problems if we just quit meddling in other people's countries.
Oh, yeah, but unfortunately the U.S. government believes it's their divine right or their new Monroe Doctrine or whatever doctrine they're going to call it to go on out and meddle with the rest of the world. And it all goes back to the 1990s to a group called the Project for the New American Century, which was a Washington, D.C. think tank. And they're still around. They've changed their name, but it's the same people. And their idea was that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States was the one remaining superpower on Earth and therefore should start to act like one. And they were literally pushing an agenda of 100 years of war to bring the entire planet under the control of the United States.
Well, unfortunately, that's the case. Well, that's all I had. It just occurred to me that if we ban the travel of the armed forces, we might accomplish something.
Well, it would certainly
more in jest.
Look at all that money we would save that we could put back into our infrastructure, and would certainly result in a lot of people around the world not hating us quite as much as they do. All right, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now then, getting on back to the economic news. Apparently Donald Trump is expected to nominate Randall Quarles and Marvin Goodfriend to 2 of the 3 vacancies over at the Federal Reserve. So starting to put some new people in there. And but again, ultimately, the only solution that will work to get America's economy great again is the one that Andrew Jackson did, and that is to shut that private central bank down and stop this practice of allowing a private bank to issue the public currency as a loan at interest. And by the way, all of this is unconstitutional. The Constitution vests Congress with the authority to coin the money. And remember the other day we were talking about the article in the Constitution limiting what states can do. And even in there it said, nothing but gold and silver shall be the coinage. And there is nothing in the Constitution that allows Congress to delegate the creation of the monetary supply to a private party. It's unconstitutional. Now then, this is a very alarming story. And I'm getting it off of RINF.com right now, and it's backing up here. Apparently, Israel is now announcing that Al-Aqsa no longer belongs to the Palestinians. So they're ramping up. They're trying to provoke a response. If there is a major war over between Saudi Arabia and Iran, you can count on Israel going into Gaza while the world is looking somewhere else, because that's a repeating pattern. Another little story over here. This is a very interesting one. This came out in Natural News, and it's basically talking about some communication from George Soros, in which apparently, according to Breitbart London, George Soros recently admitted publicly that yes, he wants to wipe out all European borders by global migrant blitzkrieg invasions. Not exactly his words, but that's basically it. That's the plan. To erase the idea of sovereign independent nations by shoving everybody's population everywhere on the globe. And he's spending vast amounts of his fortune to do it. And obviously we have a problem where people who acquire this much wealth start thinking that they are gods. And that the earth and all that is on it, including human beings, are their little playthings. And we've seen that coming from Soros. We've seen that coming from Bill Gates. These people are not elected to control our lives. Nobody I know has said, yes, I will let Bill Gates make health decisions for me. I will let George Soros decide that my nation should be erased from the face of the earth. We're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And the corporate media, I have never seen such a display of spin doctoring in my life. I'm looking at the Daily Telegraph and their article on Comey's testimony about how James Comey thinks the president lied about the reason that Comey was fired, and he was feeling badgered over the investigation into Russian meddling in the election. And nowhere in there do they report that when he was asked directly, did somebody tell you to stop these investigations, he said no, nothing of the kind. It's just pure spin. They're trying to save their reputation from this epic fail here. Amazing. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Douglas in Atlanta. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Love your show. Love your show. I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
My question is pertaining to John McCain's portion of the questioning. I'm wondering if you had a chance to see that, because I watched it twice and it was so incoherent. I still don't understand what he was asking or the point he was trying to get across. And for a second, I actually felt bad for Comey. He looked very confused, and well, so was I.
Yeah, that didn't come across very clear. I think McCain was trying to find some way that he could get Comey to say that Trump had committed an impeachable offense, but Comey was basically standing firm. You know, he's out there saying that he believes Russia hacked the DNC, that he felt he was being pressured. But again, when it came right down to it, Comey was saying no, he was never ordered to stop any investigations. And I think McCain was just thrashing around trying to find some way that he could get an answer from Comey that the corporate media could use as further ammunition against Trump. And it was rather embarrassing. It almost makes Comey look like he's deteriorated mentally along the lines of Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters, who are not looking very rational these days. In fact, I'm thinking the descent into senility is proving to be very graceful for all of these people.
Yeah, you mean McCain, right? Not Comey?
Yeah, McCain.
Yeah. He kept bringing up Hillary and some of the Russia collusion, and he kept bringing up the Hillary Clinton, investigation. I don't know. I couldn't make any sense of it. Sounds like most people couldn't either. Maybe it's just time to put him in the funny farm.
Well, it may be.
That's it.
Okay, I kind of have to wonder if there's a lot of election fraud going out in Arizona, because I keep getting emails from people who are in Arizona saying, I don't vote for the guy. Nobody I know votes for the guy. But he just lingers on here, and of course he's a friend of Israel, and that makes him untouchable. And a reminder, it was his father, Admiral John McCain, who was in charge of the cover-up of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty. And again, when we get into our third hour, we will be talking about that. Thank you for the phone call, Douglas. We're going to let you go. We were talking about Europe, borders, and all the rest of it. Right now, in Great Britain, there is what is going on is called a Brexodus, and it's not the Brexit. These are the people who are citizens of the European Union, other member states, who are currently in Great Britain living and working. They're now starting to do the migration back to the continent. And apparently one of the reasons they're leaving, because they're doing surveys, is the business climate not good? Is the economy not good? Apparently Great Britain is in the middle of an epidemic of syphilis. They're at the highest rate in 80 years. And gee, I wonder who walked through that tunnel and brought that onto the British Isles. Now, as you know, several of the European Union member states, in particular Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, have just flat out refused to accept any more of the refugees. And the European Commission is saying they're going to start hitting them with economic sanctions as early as next week. So this is heating up there. This could be the issue that actually breaks the European Union, rather than the predations of that European Central Bank. Over at the TSA, the Tourism Suppression Agency, they're talking about extending the ban on laptops to domestic flights. You will not be allowed to have your laptop in the cabin. You will have to put it in the checked baggage, where people can copy off the data or just steal it outright. And I had the TSA drop and smash a very expensive laptop in Seattle, which is why I would prefer to keep my equipment with me in my hands. But you know something? This has got nothing to do with terror. You cannot sabotage the airplane with a laptop in the cabin. The cabin Wi-Fi system is isolated from the cockpit electronics. And there is not enough room in a modern laptop to have a significant amount of explosives. What this is all about is increasing revenue for the airline. If you don't have your laptop, you're going to be using that little back-of-the-seat entertainment system. Just swipe that little credit card and watch movies on that instead of your own personal electronic devices. You watch. It'll be tablets next. It'll be tablets, and then they'll say, well, you know, you've got to turn off your smartphones for the entire flight, not just for takeoff and landing. And by the way, Mythbusters, a few years ago, actually did an episode on this idea of cell phones being a problem in an aircraft. And they got an aircraft with a fully modern instrument control system, and they got a whole bunch of cell phones, and they turned them on, and they had all kinds of amplifiers. They could not get a twitch on any of those cockpit instruments from any of the radiation coming out from laptops, computers, tablets, or cell phones. It's just more regulation for the sake of regulation. We're going to make you feel safe by getting you to turn off your cell phone. Now, as you know, gun sales are on the rise again as people look more and more at the signs of an economic upset, as they look at the surge in crime, rapes, robberies, brought about by the open border policy. And apparently there is now a huge debate coming up over the issue of suppressors. And apparently the argument is that suppressors actually do a valid, legitimate function in that they protect the shooter from excessive sound and the flash, and some act as a muzzle brake to counterbalance the recoil. And apparently the opposition to suppressors coming from the government is coming from people who actually are not shooters themselves and believe the movies and TV shows where somebody screws a little tube onto the front of a gun and the gun is now absolutely silent. And that is simply not true. It's something movies and TV made up, and the anti-gunners saw it and said, oh my goodness, it's just going to lead to all kinds of crime. We can't have that. What a suppressor does is it breaks up the shock wave of the exit from the barrel. So instead of having one big shock wave that can actually damage your ears, you get a rapid series of smaller ones. But it's still noisy. And it's just another reminder that all of these laws are being passed by people who don't know what they're talking about. And that's the problem that you get when you have a permanent ruling class of hereditary congressmen and hereditary presidents. And it's a far cry from how this country started, where everybody who was in the government was expected to have their own business, provide for themselves, not live off the taxpayers. And being in the government was pretty much a part-time honorary position, except for the president, who was there full-time, and the vice president. But members of Congress, they were expected to have jobs. Look at the people who started the country. Thomas Jefferson was a lawyer. George Washington had a distillery. Paul Revere was a silversmith. John Hancock sold insurance. Ben Franklin was a publisher and inventor. They were able to create a government that worked because these were men who knew how to make things work. What made sense and what was nonsense. We don't have that anymore. We have politicians who are trying to make policy about firearms who know nothing about firearms. We have politicians trying to make policy about the Internet who do not use the Internet. We have politicians trying to make policy about medicines and vaccines who do not know anything about medicines or vaccines. They're just there for sale to the highest bidder. And it is amazing. Now, if you are using Skype, which I am right now, to send this show to RBN. Apparently Microsoft, which has acquired Skype, they're now retiring it for older platforms starting July the 1st. And apparently they're quitting the Windows Phone 8, the Windows Phone 8.1, Windows 10 Mobile, Windows RT, TV, And this all ends July 1st, and also some of the Linux versions. If you are running those, you will not be allowed to log on in. Apparently, Skype is going through a rework of how it's being done. I hope it's not as disastrous as when it went to the cloud and then everything broke. But if you're on one of those older versions of Skype, you may need to be looking at finding another platform. And I'm sure Microsoft would be happy to sell you a new platform so that you keep on using Skype. But apparently that's going to be a real issue now. And it's more of this forced, planned obsolescence. And as a matter of fact, because I run Skype on a separate machine from my desktop, and the separate machine is running XP, and so now I'm having to buy a new laptop just to run Skype after July, which is annoying the heck out of me because this XP machine is perfectly good. Apparently there's been another major accident of a nuclear nature over in Japan at the Oahu Research and Development Center outside Tokyo, and if memory serves, they've had some bad problems there. Apparently 5 staffers were mishandling plutonium dust, and they all got huge lungfuls. And they're saying basically no one has ever inhaled this much plutonium before. And I love this line from the story. Japanese authorities are unsure about the medical prognosis for these 5 staffers. Unsure? I'm sorry. They're toast. There's no way to get that stuff out of their body. It's just insane. Okay, let's talk about human-caused global warming. We're still seeing all the nattering and gromishing about how Trump pulled out of the Paris climate deal and, global warming is going to destroy us all. We have Governor Aiea here in Hawaii has signed a bill where Hawaii is now taking part in the Paris Accord, which is a constitutional violation. State governors are not allowed to engage in foreign policy. It's also a violation of the Logan Act. Meanwhile, in the real world, a freak snowstorm hit the French Alps in June. Normally in June, the area is basically hiking and biking, and all of a sudden, they got snow. Over in Mammoth Resort, California, they have so much snow built up from this last winter. They're going to be open until August at least. At this point, it is looking like we are, in fact, heading into a new mini ice age. And how fast it's going to come on us, well, that's going to be determined by solar energy output. And again, we have Al Gore's got his Inconvenient sequel coming out in the theaters this summer at the hottest time of the year. And the corporate media is still out there screaming, oh yeah, it's hot, it's just horrible. Record high temperatures all over the place. Really, you got to pay carbon taxes. And that's what it's really all about. They want your money. They want your obedience. Because there isn't a thing they can do that's going to stop climate from changing. They can't. They cannot control the energy output of the sun. They cannot shift the Earth around in its orbit. Al Gore and his people are as impotent to dealing with the climate as Caligula was dealing with Neptune. Now, as you know, everyone's talking about the opium crisis in this country. And it is out of control here. And it's rather amazing to see the federal government still out there screaming about marijuana, being this gateway drug and it's going to lead to opium addiction. And so far, the federal government is turning a blind eye to the overprescription of opioids by doctors. And apparently, over in Ohio, the state government is suing 5 drug companies, Teva, Allergan, Johnson & Johnson, Purdue, and Endo, for using unlawful marketing practices that have led to Ohio's opioid addiction problem. And they went back and they discovered that in 2012, a staggering 793 million doses of opioid drugs were prescribed to Ohio citizens. That works out to 68 pills for every living person in the state of Ohio. And the suit is accusing the drug makers of conspiring to influence opinion leaders and medical groups to market these drugs. And apparently they had this marketing campaign that had false information about, oh, this stuff isn't as addictive as the street. You don't need to worry about it. But yes, it doesn't matter if it's opium from the doctor or opium from the street. It is addictive. And there are now people in Ohio who are hooked on these drugs. And that's a steady source of revenue for the pharmaceutical corporations. And it's going to get really ugly when these people are unable to pay for the prescription opium. Apparently, there are now 18 counties in Ohio with no health insurance providers because of the collapse of Obamacare. And I think this idea that the pharmaceutical industries literally set on out to turn American patients into opium addicts for the sake of profitability is something that needs to be made a big deal out of, instead of going on out and screaming about the marijuana plants in Granny's window box. The war on drugs is the war on the other people's drugs, the competition's drugs, our drugs coming in from Afghanistan. They're good. The drugs sold by our good friends at the big pharmaceutical corporations, those are good. All the others are bad. The ones you're growing in your backyard, those are bad. We can't make money off of those. I have to look at all those doctors who went along with this thing and remind them of one of the principles that goes all the way back to Hippocrates. First of all, do no harm. But to literally take part in a program of giving people medication they don't need, medication that might even be harmful, medication that will addict them in exchange for whatever emoluments they got from the pharmaceutical corporations, boy, that's not a doctor I would not want to have touching my body. I absolutely would not. And that, again, is one of the reasons we have such expensive medical care and such poor quality care. It's all about the money, not about the patient. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. So let's talk a little bit about GMO food. And I'm looking at this article out of Natural News saying that basically GMO has been a massive failure on every level. Now, remember we reported earlier in the week that Melania Trump will not serve GMO in the White House. They're keeping Barron on a diet of natural organic food. They do not serve GMO at Westminster. They will not serve GMO in Monsanto's own cafeteria. Now, these products were being sold, and governments were being arm-twisted into literally ordering farmers to use them. That's what happened in India with the BT cotton that led to all the suicides. It was all politics. We're going to give you a bunch of money. You will order your farmers to use this. And it's turned out none of the promises and claims ever worked out. The Roundup Ready crops, the glyphosate isn't working anymore because the weeds have adopted the glyphosate resistance, or they've evolved it. And apparently Monsanto understood that it was only going to work for a few years before nature did what nature does. They were promising increased yields. That didn't work. They were promising increased hardiness to environmental variations. That definitely failed. These GMO creations are very fragile. They're very susceptible to changes in the environment. They work fine in a laboratory where you've got a controlled environment. Out there in the real world, GMO has failed to deliver on every single one of their promises. And they are still out there poisoning and tainting the natural varieties that are still out there. And it is a reminder that our country, our government, our corporations are playing with some incredibly dangerous technologies and rushing them to market without due consideration. The attitude is, if we can do it, let's do it. And nobody steps back and thinks, should we be doing it? Should we be taking these risks? Genetic engineering is the most dangerous technology humans have ever played with. Tinkering with the code of life. Mistakes are going to be devastating. A lot of people often ask me, well, if you think that there's intelligent life out there, why do you think they haven't shown up here yet? Well, personally, I don't think we have anything that would interest them. But there's another possibility that maybe every evolving intelligent civilization reaches a point where they start playing with their own life chemistry, they make a mistake, and they go extinct. We don't know until we get out there and find a civilization that has survived this crisis point, because it is a crisis point. Still, Monsanto is out there trying to insist that you don't need to know if there's GMO in your food. We got to sell it to somebody. The rest of the world doesn't want it. We'll just sell it to you dumb Americans. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come on back, we're going to have Phil Turney and Dave Gahary about the USS Liberty. We'll be right back. Aloha America, welcome back to our show, hour number 3, and joining us for the program for this hour is Phil Turney and Dave Gahary, and the subject is the 50th anniversary of Israel's attack on the USS Liberty. Phil Turney is an author of the book Erasing the Liberty, which I'm showing to the BAM user camera right now, and hopefully they're going to turn it into a movie. So, Phil and Dave, thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Mike, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, that goes for me too, Mike. Very appreciative.
Well, we certainly seem to have a little bit of an echo there. So let's begin with Phil and the writing of this book, the push for the movie, and then I'd like to go on to Dave talking about the actual incident itself.
Okay, Mike. 50 years ago today, at 1400, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we got struck, but before that happened, we were surveilled by Israeli reconnaissance aircraft for approximately 6 to 8 hours. They know exactly who we were, and we were in international waters at all times, 12.5 miles off the Sinai coast, never strayed into anybody's waters. The Israelis radioed back to their war room that American ship, USS Liberty. They know exactly who we were, and that at 2 o'clock, here comes the attack. And the attack started with unmarked jet aircraft, and within 2 seconds, Mike, they took out every antenna aboard that ship, and the 450 caliber machine guns we had, and the people in the gun mounts were all killed. Many men were wounded on the deck. It was just basically hell on earth. Mike, as you well know, you know a lot about this Liberty story because we've talked about it before. And it just, here it is 50 years ago, and this piece of non-history is gone. I mean, it's shows like this and my book and Dave and everybody around that cares about the truth. What we're trying to get the word out, and this isn't here to bash old Jews. You know, in fact, we get a lot of donations from American Jews that want to see the truth come out. So, what I'm going to tell you is the truth, the honest to God's truth. I'm sitting here at the Sheraton in Virginia Beach, where the survivors are. Everybody's having a good time, telling their stories and things like that, reminiscing. And what mainly happened that day is so vivid in my mind today. It's like yesterday. The jet aircraft came over, and as I said, they hit every antenna. Within 2 seconds, they were taken out. They were hitting the bridge. They hit every watertight door on that ship. Every watertight door on that ship, Mike, it was taken out. So they know exactly what they were doing, when to hit it, how to hit it, and how fast to hit it. The air attack lasted 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. There's some discussion about that. The ship sustained, Mike, over 850 cannon and rocket holes. and over 5,000 armor-piercing bullets, napalm burning us up, and a 40 by 40 foot starboard in the starboard side of 40 by foot torpedo hole, which instantly blew 25 American sailors to bits, and they worked for the National Security Agency that went into their spaces, and they continued the attack until they ran out of ammo. And the reason I know about all the bullet holes and all the rocket holes and everything is because I was one of the teams. I was in damage control that counted all those holes. When we got to 850, we were told to quit counting. So who knows how many was in it? Well, we know at least 850 was in it, and over 5,000 armor-piercing bullets. The bridge was riddled. The bridge was bombed with napalm. I helped in damage control, getting men off the deck, throwing them anywhere we could, down ladders, in corners, anywhere we could. And these guys were so ruthless, you know. They would shoot at anything that moved. And finally, the jets ran out of ammo. And 15 minutes into the attack, Mike, and this is a big part of the story. We got a antenna hooked up. The tuner wasn't working. They took it offline, and Terry Haldebardier, which he received the Silver Star for, risked his life and limb to hook that antenna up, and they got a mayday out. Rockstar, under attack by unknown jet aircraft. Need help. Rockstar. This was picked up by the 6th Fleet, USS Saratoga, and USS America. Captain Tolley launched from the USS Saratoga immediately. Those jet aircraft were recalled. McNamara says, "Get them back on the deck now." Get them back. Now, Captain Tolley did. He brought them back, and he sent another volley right after that. And McNamara knew it, and he called him again, and he says, "Get those airplanes back, and I mean now." Johnson grabbed the phone out of McNamara's hand, and he says, "I don't give a GD if every man aboard that ship dies. We're not going to embarrass our ally Israel." Now, if we didn't know who was attacking us, how in the hell did he know?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because the signals we were throwing out, Mike, were unidentified jet aircraft. The only time that we knew, Mike, about who was attacking us is when the torpedo boats showed up in their torpedo boats, and we thought they were there to help us. And we weren't worried about getting attacked because they knew we were there. We had picked up their messages, and you know, we thought the Israelis would be there to help us in case anything happened. So to see their airplanes in the morning was a great sight for us, because we could see the bombing going on the Sinai, black smoke and everything, and it felt good to see them, and it felt good to see the torpedo boats. We thought,
yeah,
until they got into a torpedo launch attitude. They fired not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 torpedoes at that ship. 5. And thank God only one hit the ship, unfortunately killing 25 brave young American souls to bits, as I said. They were just unrecognizable. The torpedo boats continued the attack with their machine guns and their cannons. And they circled the ship and fired at our firefighters, stretcher bearers, anything that moved. Anything that moved. They would shoot at. They wanted everybody aboard that ship dead. So that continued on and on and on and on. And the old man said, prepare to abandon ship. The ship was leaning over at about 10 to 11, 12 degree list. And he says, prepare to abandon ship. And we had enough life rafts on there for 294 souls, which was approximately how many men we had aboard the ship. Now, I'll remind you, 2/3 of the ship was CTs. They were all spies, and I was in ship's company. So the reason I bring that up is that we were the most sophisticated intelligence platform, gathering platform in the world at that time. We could bounce signals off the moon and send them back to the National Security Agency within seconds. And back in 1967, that was really saying something. Mm-hmm. You can imagine what they have now. So we put over. There was only 3 live rafts left. I cut one of them loose myself, and it went over the side. It inflated and it floated behind the ship. And they shot the live rafts out of the water. 2 of them, they took one aboard the ship as a trophy, I assume. I heard it was in a museum in Tel Aviv somewhere, and which was unthinkable. It was a war crime. The napalm was a war crime. And then to shoot the live rafts, we were going to put our most seriously wounded in. They were wounded everywhere on that ship. I mean, on the mess decks, anywhere they could put a body, they put one. And I mean wounds so indescribably horrible and hideous, it just brought you to tears. In fact, there was one fellow, his name was Quintero. He was laying on a table, mess deck's table where we ate, and he had a shrapnel wound or 50 caliber where the gray matter was his brains. And he was lucid. He was talking, and he lifted up his right hand, and his thumb was gone. And he says, turning, he says, you think you could find my thumb so somebody could sew it back on for me? That's all he was concerned about. And he was gravely injured. But all he wanted was his thumb back. And there were so many men like that. It's just, I can't tell you. And then not getting any help from our government. We didn't get any help until 18 hours later. So we were all alone after this almost 2-hour attack with nothing but ourselves to take care of ourselves, Mike. It was unbelievably sad. I helped Doc Kiefer with operations, and there was a fellow named Blanchard. He was the first we got on the table. He was severely wounded. His kidneys were blown apart. After we cut him open, we found that out. But before that, he said, please take my socks off. His feet were just burning up. So I took his socks off and tried to rub his feet to get some circulation running into them. And he looked at me and, he said, am I going to live? And I shook my head no. I mean, I had no right to do that, but I knew that he wasn't going to make it, and I don't know why I did that. I still to this day regret it. But as soon as the doc cut him open, he died. He was dead. So he put a couple more stitches in him, and we laid him on the deck. And the doc continued on with these operations, and I was holding a battle lantern where he could see. I've never done anything like that before. Never been in an operating room. This wasn't an operating room. This was a makeshift operating room. And Doc Kiefer was wounded in the abdomen. He had a life vest on to hold his guts in, and his knees were full shot up. That man standing on his legs for approximately 18 hours, saving people's lives. There's no telling how many people's lives he saved aboard Liberty. Now, two-thirds of the crew was either dead or wounded. There was 294 souls aboard that ship, and 34 were slaughtered, were murdered. 174 others were wounded. 174 others were wounded, and no help from nobody, nowhere. The word came out as soon as we saw the torpedo boats that it's the Israelis, and this went out all over the world. They heard it in Vietnam, they heard it in Morocco. There's no telling how many listening stations they heard it. We were being attacked by the Israelis, and Johnson knew it way before time. So you can come to your own conclusions on what was happening to us. The next morning, 18 hours after the attack, we saw the USS America, USS Davis, and USS Massey. The America airlifted all the seriously wounded off the ship, and I mean seriously, these guys were just blown up. And there's one fellow here at the reunion that's still got 56 pieces of shrapnel in his body right now. And I just got through talking to his three sons. Bill LeMay is his name. And every time he goes in the airport, they pat him down, do everything. He says, well, I got shrapnel away from me. And so he goes through the machine over and over and over again. Finally, they see the shrapnel and they let him go. But that's how difficult his life's been. And another fellow, Larry Weaver, he's had over 40 operations in the last 50 years to keep him alive. Over 40 major operations to keep this man alive. That's how severely he was wounded. So, we felt terrible about the whole thing. We felt terrible that our ally did it. And we also felt worse about the fact that no help came to us. Now, when help finally did get there, the USS Davis pulled up alongside. They sent their damage control, about 18 fellows over, crewmen over to help us patch up as much as they could and shore up the bulkheads where the torpedo had hit. And these men would rub their hands against the bulkheads, and they saw all the men. They helped load them up and put them on the helos, and they were in tears. I mean, these guys were crying, and I don't blame them for what they saw. And everybody was so angry. Why couldn't we come help you? Why couldn't we come help you? Well, the word was out, and they went at flank speed to come help us, and they were turned around, not to come to Liberty's aid. And so they didn't get there until 18 hours later, when help was only 15 minutes away. One of the most disgraceful pieces of non-history that America has ever committed on American sailors and Marines and national security people. I just met another fella a few minutes ago. He was a National Security Agency civilian, and I just talked to him briefly, and I said, how in the hell did you get out of there? He said, well, I heard everything going on. I heard that the torpedoes were coming. I went up on another deck, and he got out the door. It would save his life, because he was in the bowels of the ship. He would have died instantly. So many miracles happened that day. I was so happy to see this fella, and of course I didn't know him from Adam, but we talked for just a few minutes because I had to get on this radio show, of course, and afterwards we're going to do John Stadtmiller's show.
Yes. For
2 hours. But the most amazing thing about this story, Mike, is that Admiral Kidd came aboard our ship, Flag Admiral, about 2 days, maybe 2.5 days after the attack, and queried a lot of people, and there was 4 or 5 of us. I don't know how I got into this group, but we were summoned to the sick bay, and we didn't know what was going on. And here comes this Flag Admiral in, Admiral Isaac Kidd, and he said, "Gents," he says, "I got something I got to ask you. I want you to tell me the truth, what you heard, what you saw, everything about the attack." In which all of us did. He took his stars off, Mike, and threw them on the metal table, and they rang off like a bell. He says, "Now listen, I'm not an admiral anymore. I'm just a lowly sailor, an E1. If you want to call me that, that's fine. But I need the God's honest truth from you." So yeah, we felt great about it. I mean, we felt ecstatic that we could tell somebody. And we all told him what happened: the machine gun and the life rafts, and shooting at our firefighters and stretcher bearers, and dropping napalm on our ship. The torpedo gunmen shooting at us continually. And also, I forgot to read the first part of the story, or in the story, there were helicopters sent over Mike with two Bearing helicopters.
Phil,
yes.
I'm going to have to put you on hold right now for 3 minutes. We got to do a commercial break, and we'll be right back with Phil Turney and Dave Kahary and the story of the attack on the USS Liberty. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Phil Turney and Dave Kahary about Israel's attack on the USS Liberty 50 years ago today. And Phil, you were talking about the helicopters that had come on over.
Yes, Mike, can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine, thank you.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Actually, I'm just thrilled that you have Dave and I on your radio show. But what I was going to say to you was, Mike, there was gunships, helicopter gunships, coming to finish us off. But what happened was, well, I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself, but they were going to board our ship. One was on the starboard side. I was about 50, 70 feet from the starboard gun mount. I just left that before the attack started, where two of my friends were blown to bits, I'm telling you. And they were going to board our ship and kill us all. And this one Israeli smiled, and I just gave him the bird, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me the bird back and smiled, and thought that it was the funniest thing he ever saw in the world, I guess, after all the carnage and everything they had done to that ship. But the only thing that drove those people off, the only thing that saved us, is the word was already out around the world that we were an American ship being attacked by Israel. And then the cover-up immediately began. Mistaken identity, we're so sorry, you know, and all this other nonsense. But that's the only thing that drove them off. The gig was up, and they knew it, and they got caught with their hand in a bucket full of blood, oceans of blood on that ship, and they didn't care. They wanted us all dead, and blame it on one of the Arab states. And you know, Mike, if the American public would have heard about the USS Liberty being sunk by one of the Arab states during the 6-Day War, the people of America and our government would have been asking for blood, and they would have gotten oceans of blood, oceans of it. And you know that as well as I do.
My understanding is Israel, that while the attack was going on, Israel was saying that it was Egypt that was attacking your ship.
That's what they wanted everybody to believe. But you know, using unmarked jet aircraft, they thought we were an easy target. Now this is an old World War II tub that ferried troops and supplies and stuff like that back and forth. And it was an old flat bottom, just a ship that they took out of mothballs, and there was 3 of them, I believe, they made. Just like the Liberty, but I believe ours was the only one that had TRESCOM. That's the one we could bounce the signals off the moon. So once they knew the gig was up, that's the only thing that saved us. That's the only thing that saved us. Or they would have boarded our ship, and they would have machine gunned us all, and they'd have scuttled the ship. And that'd have been the end of it. And the word would have been on the news everywhere that, oh no, our ship was sunk by an Arab government, and they would have attacked Cairo. There were signs that nuclear-tipped aircraft were in the air ready to
yes.
incinerate Cairo.
I'd heard that.
So, yeah, and you know, here we go. We got the Russians, you know, in the area. In fact, the only people that ever tried to come to help us was a Russian ship. They asked if we need help, and the captain politely said, "No, thanks. We'll get along fine without ourselves." Of course, he wouldn't let any Russian get on a spy ship, because there's just no way it wasn't going to happen. But they did offer help. I mean, the Russians did, the Soviet Union at that time. They offered us help to shoot him away, and they left. No problem. And to get back to Admiral Kidd, Admiral Kidd was so kind and gentle to us. We told him everything. I was in damage control. I was in charge of. I was on-scene leader after Chief Thompson got hit. I became on-scene leader.
Okay, Phil, I hate to do this again. We have a kind of a lopsided clock here. We're going to have to take another 4 minutes for commercials. Then we'll have a long block of time where you can continue your story about Admiral Kidd. Also, we do have a caller on the line who I think has a question. So we'll be back after these few words.
Thank you, Mike.
Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Phil Turney and Dave Kahari about Israel's attack on the USS Liberty 50 years ago today. I'm getting all kinds of emails from people who are expressing their sympathy and support and saying that they're never going to forget what happened either. So, Phil, I'd like you to complete your story about Admiral Kidd, and then we have a caller waiting on the line with a question.
Okay, absolutely. Admiral Kidd, Mike put his stars back on. And he said, now I'm an admiral again. He got beat red, Mike, and said, listen, man, you guys better never say anything to anybody, not your parents, not your shipmates, especially not the newspapers, anybody, or I'll make sure you go to prison or worse. And we all knew what worse meant. They were going to kill us. So I never said a word about it for 20 years. When I married my second wife, I never even told her I was in the military. So there's so much more to this story, but folks, go to usslibertymovie.com. usslibertymovie.com. You'll see a trailer there, and you can get my new book, Erasing the Liberty, and you can make a donation. Now, we're trying to make a film about this, and Mike, Dave can tell you so much more about that part of it. And if you wouldn't mind, we could switch to Dave and then get that taken care of right quick and take some callers.
Well, before we go to Dave, let's go ahead and take the caller because he's been waiting patiently for quite some time. Peter in Los Angeles, do you have a question for Phil or Dave?
Yeah, Phil and Dave, thank you so much. I can't believe when I hear about stress and PTSD, and you guys weren't even allowed to talk to your wives or to say, my hat is completely off to you, and I completely support. I followed this since I was 14 when this happened, and I thought it was ridiculous when I was 14. But I wanted to ask you a couple. I understand that they jammed your signals. I've also heard in the past the taped intercepts of Israeli ground control and their pilots saying, this is an American ship, blah, 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 and they say, go ahead and attack it. I want to know why we haven't heard more of those and why those aren't up somewhere where we can get to them. And I also would like to have you guys talk about what this experience has had where basically the U.S. president disavowed you all and the U.S. military chain of command disavowed you all. And what does that tell you about the power of the Jewish lobby in the United States? And one more question, and that is, why don't you guys sell hats, USS Liberty hats, like they have? I have one from the Missouri, the Navy hats. Why don't you? I'd buy one. I bet 100,000 people would probably buy one and send it to the survivors. That's it for me.
Okay, I thank you very much for that. And Dave can probably answer those questions better than I can at this point. He's more of the business side of it, and I think Dave should answer that. Go ahead, Dave, please, if that's okay with you, Mike.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, first, the first part of your question, the intercepts, yes, that's why there's no controversy about the attack on the USS Liberty, is because there were several of the Israelis involved in the attack admitted that they knew it was an American ship. So that information is out there. In fact, it's in Erasing the Liberty, and it's in several other books. So that's well documented. Why isn't it all over the place? Well, for the obvious reasons that you mentioned, the power of the Jewish lobby. The Jewish lobby actually pays people, Jewish people mostly, to scour the internet and make sure that stuff like this isn't on there. So we've all experienced how YouTube wipes out people's accounts and Facebook once you start talking about the truth. So that's why. In reference to the hats, we are going to do something like that, actually. After the reunion wraps up, we're going to do hats and T-shirts, because that's something that a lot of folks have shown an interest in. Then we're going to use everything that we can from anything that we do to fund the movie.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take one more phone call. Frank in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. I appreciate the gentleman not forgetting and not letting this go. And I've known about it for some years. And what the guest was just stating there, though, it was a perfect segue for my call, because I made a point of listening to the loudest voice in the so-called alternative truth media, 9/11 Truth, all that. The guy built a career on exposing false flags. There has been not one mention of the 50th anniversary of the attack on the USS Liberty this week on Alex Jones, Infowars.com. He's been scrubbed. He's been paid off. So I think he should be shamed for that.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, and that's why we haven't done any shows with him and anybody that needs a bullhorn to act like a jackass. I personally don't want to have anything to do with.
All right, thank you.
All right, Frank, we're going to let you go here. So, Dave, why don't you tell us more about the plans for the movie? I know that you and I had some offline discussions about ways to approach the visual effects that would be necessary for an accurate recreation of exactly what Israel's armed forces did to the ship.
Yeah, Mike. We actually, and I'll just mention it now because folks can go there to USS Liberty Movie, and I'm going there just simply to click on the Milestones tab, because on the Milestones tab you could see when the fundraising began for the movie, and you can also see all of the media appearances we had, and yours was, I think, the first, or one of the first, or the first. So yes, we have talked about this, and you, of course, and Phil had mentioned it, you had offered to do some work on it, and yes, it was July 13th, 2016. So folks can listen to that interview. But since July 13th, 2016, Mike, we've had a lot of things happen. A lot of people have come forward in the film industry, including an award-winning musician who offered to do the score for absolutely free. I said on a radio show yesterday, we did a show on an AM radio station in Santa Cruz, California, and I mentioned it, but I said I'm not going to mention the person's name because our adversary knows how to stop things. At any rate, if I mentioned the person's name, everyone would know who he was, and he's going to do that for free. We have a filmmaker who also contacted us and offered his services for free, and other people in the film industry. So things are going good along that angle. As far as what we need to get it done, Mike, it's just very simple. It's what everyone might think we need is money. And the way that we are fundraising, we're not at this point using GoFundMe or Indiegogo. We may in the future, but we're just using the website, usslibertymovie.com. And there are some folks who said that they have difficulty getting onto it today. I think that's because of a lot of the traffic, not because of the 50th anniversary. But if you go to that website, you'll see a couple of tabs, Home, About, Donate, Milestones, and Contact. I was just talking about Milestones, the About. You can find out why we're doing this. To your listeners, it's pretty obvious, because the reason is that it's been 50 years, it's been half a century, and nothing's been done, basically. Hell, the guy who just called up said you can't even find the stuff about the Israelis admitting they knew it was an American ship. So we decided the only way that we're going to get it out there in an effective manner is through a full-length feature film. Not a narrative film, which is fictional, not a documentary, but an actual full-length feature film, which begins with, "This is a true story." And Mike, you've got the book.
Yes.
I imagine you have read it. Is that right?
I've read pretty much all of it. I'm still working through the ending of it. It's a very hard book to read. You know, and that's some of the reactions we're getting from the emails here, where people are writing and saying they're literally in tears listening to Phil's descriptions of what happened.
Book is hard to read. I'm aware of that, and it's not. We didn't do it on purpose, but we wanted it to be completely factual. You know, talking about setting up Egypt. You know, there really isn't that much information out there where someone could say with certainty that yes, that was the plan. It was a false flag. So we just wanted to present the facts, and I think that, and Phil does also, and I'm sure you would as well. If the story is presented along the lines of the book, and you know, Mike, because the book, most of it is the attack. It's a little, in the beginning, it's okay, a little bit about Phil, how he got in the Navy, and at the end, it's about coming back from Malta and going back to Virginia, where I'm actually right now on the military base where the USS Liberty came back to in Virginia at Little Creek. I'm at Little Creek right now. This is where I'm staying. Phil is in Norfolk. Okay. Norfolk is the largest naval base in the world, but they didn't want the Liberty to go back to Norfolk for the obvious reason, so they sent it here to Little Creek so no one would see what was going on. So what we need, Mike, is very simple. We're funding the movie through the book. If somebody goes to usslibertymovie.com, clicks on the donate tab, they'll see the options. $25, a United States $25 donation will get the book to you at a U.S. address. Because the cost of postage is so high, unfortunately, I don't know why it is, even to Canada, we have to add $25 for non-U.S. donations in order to get the book. A lot of people, and I said this earlier on another show, a lot of people who donate leave us a note with the donation, and they say, I don't want the book, just get the movie done. There's a lot, and I am not advocating that. I'm not telling listeners to do that. That's just very heartening, on top of all the emails we get of support. So if folks want to get this story out, so it's indisputable, this is what happened, based on a true story, or this is a true story, and we see the story on the silver screen, or on HBO, or on Netflix, or as I say in the book, even the lowly internet. If that story is out there in the way that it happened, 100% factual, when people view that, they're going to look at each other and go, why didn't I know about this? And why did our own government not let me know about it? This could be a game changer, Mike.
I would certainly like to see that. I mean, there have been a few other documentaries about it, like Dead in the Water, and we've linked to that. And by the way, I have posted a link to usslibertymovie.com from whatreallyhappened.com, so you can go on and you can take a look at this. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the phone lines and let Phil and Dave wrap up the show here. Jeff in Idaho, do you have a question for our guests?
Yeah, Mike, a quick comment. Have you guys studied J.B. Campbell's 2010 copyright of the Operation Cyanide about the USS Liberty, where Phil Turney could be Buddy in the script? Have you guys come across that at all?
You mean Peter Hunam's book, Operation Cyanide?
Well, Operation Cyanide, these guys in 2010 did a screenplay. His name's John Bruce Campbell, and the Russian translator about the Russian support ship that you were talking about that followed you guys. You know, from the there's a 2010 screenplay that fictionalizes your stuff, and you could be Buddy in the script. I'll forward it to Michael, and he can forward it to you guys. Okay?
Okay.
You could just go to usslibertymovie.com and click on the contact tab.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, Buddy is a character that Phil would be portraying right now in the script. At page 128, it goes into Operation Cyanide in one paragraph about the armed hot B-52s with H-bombs attacking Alexandria and Cairo. Okay?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that information, Jeff. We're going to let you go here. We're going to close the phone lines for the rest of the program. We've got effectively about 10 minutes left here. And so, Dave, obviously, the book is a very good book. I would love to see the movie made. And I think, though, we need to stop thinking about recognition of what Israel did to USS Liberty in terms of acknowledgement by Israel or the U.S. government or the corporate media. It's just not going to happen. The upside is it doesn't matter anymore. we have reached a position right now where the American people, in fact the people of the world, understand they're not getting real information from government, from corporate media. They're far more willing to go on out and look at these independent sources of information. I think the watershed moment, of course, was Saddam's nuclear weapons. And ever since then, of course, continued U.S. propaganda is gaining less and less traction as they try and move forward. And given how horrendously we were lied to about Saddam's nuclear weapons, prudence demands that we go back and look at everything we've ever been told by government and the corporate media, including this nonsensical story that Israel mistook the USS Liberty for an Egyptian horse carrier because, as we all know, horse carriers have giant dish antennas all over them. And the American people are now ready to realize the government lies to them, the government conceals things from them, that Israel can do whatever it wants to American service people, and the U.S. government will do nothing about it. So, Dave, do you have anything else, or do you want to give the microphone back to Phil?
Yeah, I will. I'll be brief, and I agree with you 100%. I think the jig is up for for the American government and the American quote unquote news media. And it really is refreshing to see people scoffing and making a mockery of them, because they should be scoffed at and they should be mocked at. I would say this, Mike, before we hand it back to my good friend Phil, and he might even hand it back to me again. I don't know. It depends. We do that sometimes. But the point is this. We have been approached by people to fund the movie, fully fund the movie. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to be investors. We're not looking for investors. Investors want something back. We don't want anything back, and we don't think anyone should want something back. We want people who will donate to the film project, and what they want back is that a movie gets up there on the silver screen. So what we're doing is, and let me just say this, I figure about 25% of all the people who have donated are from overseas. A lot from the UK, Australia, literally all over the place. We haven't gotten one from Israel yet, but that might happen. But what we have gotten, though, a lot of our supporters, and Phil mentioned this, are American Jews. So this is definitely not a Jewish thing, has nothing to do with that. These are people, and especially some American Jews who have communicated with us, they're angry. They're even angrier than most people are angry about this, because they have some connection to Israel. So they want to get this done. And some of those people did the same thing I mentioned earlier. Please, keep the money, don't send the book, just get the movie done. They want to get it off their chest. Okay. 50 years is just too damn long.
Okay, Dave, we're going to have to take a 3-minute break. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We are going to take one more real quick phone call for a quick question. Steve in California, what did you want to ask Phil and Dave?
I wanted to say that in this movie, I hope there's great emphasis on the cover-up by John McCain's father, Admiral McCain. I hope you guys hit hard on that fact, because that has to be known, that cover-up.
That absolutely will be. That's a part of the book. We hope you make a donation, get the book, and you can read it in there for yourself.
And it is a good book
great.
here.
Thanks, guys.
Right. Thanks a lot, Steve. Okay. Before I turn the microphone back over to Phil, I do want to remind everybody that following my show, Phil Turney is going to be guest hosting John Stadmiller's National Intel Report for 2 hours. So you're going to be able to hear a lot more of the fine details about this horrific attack by Israel on the USS Liberty 50 years ago today. And it is a story that needs to be told, not just because of the betrayal of Israel against their supposed ally, but the betrayal of the crewmen of the Liberty by our own government, which preferred they stay silent so that they could go on saying, Israel is our friend, Israel is our friend. And as you listen to the story about the attack on the USS Liberty to try and trick us into war, think about all the other false flags that almost got us into wars or got us into wars in which Israel seemed to have a hand, like the bombing of Libya, 9/11, and so forth. Phil, you've got about 2.5 minutes. Take it away.
Thank you, Mike, and I appreciate all the callers that called in and the people that send you emails. It's very heartening. And, you know, on this 50th anniversary, which is a milestone, we're all getting older, and they just wait for us to all die off. So that's why this movie is so important. But, Mike, I wanted to emphasize something that a lot of people don't think about. Well, when you attack a flagged American ship, you attack every one of us. They attacked you, Mike. They attacked your parents. They attacked your brothers, sisters, everybody else in this country. So it was an act of war on a flagged American ship. And the saddest part of it is that our own government covered it up for him in less than 7 days with that snake that the gentleman was just talking about, John McCain Sr. And John McCain, the senator, is a cover-up artist about the USS Liberty. He said it was mistaken identity, and that's all you get out of the media. That's all you get out of the Navy. That's all you get out of the bought-and-paid congressmen and senators is, oh, it was a poor mistake. It was this and that and the other. You know, I'm an eyewitness to cold-blooded murder, and I've called the FBI, the CIA, National Security Agency, everybody I could, and told them, hey, listen, I want to report a crime, murderous crime, the murder of my shipmates. I saw it firsthand. There's no statute of limitations on murder, and there's certainly no statute of limitations on war crimes. So, folks, if you want to make this a reality, make sure the whole world knows about this. And the true story, go to USSLibertyMovie.com, USSLibertyMovie.com. Make a donation, and let's get this done once and for all. God bless you. Thank you, Mike. You're one hell of a patriot, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Now, again, everybody stand by. We're going to do the exit out of our show here, and Phil Turney will be right back on the National Intel Report telling you more about what happened when Israel attacked the USS Liberty 50 years ago today. So we're going to sign off here and let Phil take the microphone, and aloha, America.